All right, so thank you for joining today. My name is Lori Cecil-Bonani, and I am the founder of ELSIS LLC, which is a multidisciplined communications consulting firm that helps companies as early as startups and as established as Global 500s build and grow their reputations, thereby increasing awareness, business results, and credibility. I'm going to put myself off of the camera so I can just not get distracted by all that. Okay. So prior to launching my own company, I held senior level marketing, communication, and business development roles at companies that include Verizon, World 50, NBC Universal, and DDB. And now I work with, as I mentioned, startups and Global 500s to build and grow their reputations. So you can think of me as a non-traditional publicist for companies. In my corporate life, I've worked in nearly every industry, tires to toilet paper, financial to food, tech to travel. And as a consultant, I really gravitate to clients in tech, healthcare, travel and tourism, food and beverage, and education. So as we know, getting your business media attention is a pretty broad topic. So I've narrowed it down to these points for today. Why media attention is beneficial for your company, how to build your list and target the right audience, how to get a reporter's attention, as well as other places to find press, and what to do when your company is in the news. So getting your business media attention takes time and effort, but the rewards are worth it. The benefits include, but are not limited to, brand recognition and increased visibility, which reaches a wider range of people. Building and grow your reputation, especially if you're covered on a consistent basis. A thought player, you can be seen as a major player, positioning yourself as an expert in your industry. Acquisition, which can run the gamut, new users, new signups, new followers, and ultimately sales. It can pique investor interest, partner and vendor interest, saving you the time of finding them, let them find you. Recruitment, media exposure naturally attracts more talent. And finally, it raises you or your company's profile on Google. New content keeps you anything but stagnant. So we'll start with building your list, which is really the most important part. So I have a lot of tech clients, and a media list for food is not going to be the same as a tech client. In tech, a media list for an AI product is not going to even be the same for a SaaS product, different reporters. So I build my list custom for clients. Is it more work? Yes, but will my lists be targeted? Absolutely. And I cannot stress that enough. In order to build your media list while targeting the right audience, you must do research. It means doing your homework, finding the right person, the right contact information, researching media outlets, finding who the right person is. Reporters get bombarded, and if it's not a match, it's very unlikely that they're going to pass the email on to another reporter. It will just go into the trash. So finding out the media outlet's style, the types of stories they cover, what reporter covers your topic, and your email is going directly to a person, you want to have it addressed to Max or David or Jeff. And so you want to find the right person who's writing about it. See where your competitors have been featured, find out who wrote those articles. You can break out the list by media type, national, local, and industry specific, and tailor the pitch accordingly. And then don't limit yourself where it makes sense. So earlier this year, or last year, I guess, I pitched a CFO announcement for a tech startup. And we looked at local, where they were based, financial, because it was a CFO role, tech, because it was tech. And if we drill down a little farther, it was also telecom. So we really were able to expand our reach with that. PR is a numbers game, and it's a targeted numbers game. So pitch the wrong reporters and you're not making any progress. But this list you're building is always a work in progress. Now, you have to decide if it's news. Reporters won't just cover you because you exist. You need to ask yourself if what you want to pitch is really newsworthy. If the answer is yes, you want to find out what that event is. Is it a product launch? Did you secure funding? Was there a milestone like a big hire, a new client win or wins, an upcoming event. As I said, with a few exceptions, asking a reporter to cover you because you are insert any reason that is not news will get you ignored, potentially blacklisted, because no reporter is covering you just because. If you can't commit to a yes, you really need to take a step back and ask yourself if it's really news and really drill down. Could you see this as a headline or as a source in a story, an industry trend? And if it's not newsworthy, scrap and give it a minute. So if it is news, what do you do? Usually you're going to craft a press release and a press kit. And there are times when this is unnecessary, but since it's pretty standard, we'll move forward with pointers on the release. So the release needs to be well written and to the point. Does the release succinctly explain what's the story, why is it new, why is it timely, and what's the key message and takeaway? A press release is not the time to stuff everything in like the kitchen sink. It is very specific what the news is. You're going to want a boilerplate, which is the blurb about your company that typically is at the bottom of a press release. It's the about. It might have details about where you're located, who the founders are, and certainly include social links. And then when you send the release, you're going to paste it within the email copy. Do not send attachments. They will typically get deleted. And then you're going to need a press kit to go along with that. So you would want a press release, a company logo, product images, headshots and bios of anyone mentioned in the release, and they should all be high res. Do you have any explainer videos? Include it. Again, no attachments. It needs to be within a link. And the less a reporter has to ask for, the easier it is for them to cover you and or request an interview to go deeper. So basically giving them everything will allow them to go deeper with questions rather than asking, can you send me your logo? You've already covered it. And it looks like you've done this before. And if you have a logo in your email signature, hyperlink it to your website or a specific landing page on your website that's related to the news. Now, if it's not news, let's go back to the story idea. If it's not news, you've scrapped that idea and now you have a clean slate in front of you. So let's be creative. You want to find, look at regular features where you could get evergreen coverage that might not have a hard deadline. Time your pitch. Review editorial calendars. So holiday gift lists in print, go to print months in advance. So think about pitching that in May or June to get on a reporter's radar for when they're going to work on it in June or July. On Twitter, make sure you follow your targeted reporters. They use that to find sources. A couple of years ago, I have a great story. I was working with a SaaS startup that had nothing to do with this, but a reporter that I follow that was in the space was looking for, it was USA Today, and they were looking for an urgent source because the NBA was doing something with virtual reality. And I knew that the COO at the company I was working with was obsessed with virtual reality. And while it had nothing to do with that product, with their service, I was able to connect the reporter with the COO, and they were featured in USA Today, which was a pretty big win. They linked back to the website, and the team was really happy. And it gave a chance to have a little line about the company in USA Today. It's not always going to be the best way to go about things, but for this particular client, it was. And then newsjacking. So you can insert your business into breaking news, but you need to tread carefully. So a couple of years ago, Oreo went really quick on social during the blackout. So they moved fast and made news. But then a brand called Epicurious during the Boston bombing in the United States a few years ago moved too fast and didn't know enough. And they had posted something like, Boston, hope you have a great breakfast, which like was completely tone deaf. And another place, if you have a product, there's swag bag opportunities, bloggers, influencers, holding press conferences is an option. And you can't guarantee something will go viral, but you can always do something unique. So Barbara Corcoran, in her early days, used to produce research reports about the real estate industry. And so she was able to secure media interest and coverage in her early days by setting herself apart. So what else to think about before you pitch? There's things called exclusives, embargoes, and the wire. So exclusives would give one media outlet the exclusive story. So if you were to go with an exclusive, you want to be pretty confident they're going to pick it up, but you also want to give them a deadline. So if you want to pitch something to TechCrunch, maybe you give them an exclusive with the opportunity to have that story, making sure that they let you know if they're going to pass so that you can move on down the list. Obviously, something to think about with an exclusive is you can only pick one outlet until they pass. And then an embargo would set a date and a time for a story to be published. So it's used mostly for the wire, but also giving reporters more time to prepare the story when you're pitching, which has pros and cons. So one, just because you send a reporter a press release that says it's embargo doesn't mean that they've acknowledged the embargo. And the worst case scenario is that you risk pissing reporters off who did not honor it if another outlet breaks the embargo. So the best thing to do is to send an email. Will you honor an embargo? And if they say yes, you can send it and they'll have time to write about it if they choose to. If they say no, then just put them on the list to pitch after the embargo closes. So if your embargo is, 8 a.m. Eastern, at 8:02, you can certainly pitch other outlets, especially the people that didn't acknowledge your embargo or said that they didn't want to deal with it. And then I mentioned the wire. So content on the wire can reach a wider audience, but is an audience you want to reach. For public companies who have to disseminate investor and financial info, yes, of course they want to do that. But for private companies and startups, probably not, so long as that you invest the time in targeted research. Now, when we want to get the reporter's attention, we want to proactively reach out to individual journalists, being on their radar when they're looking for a source or establishing a report before you have news. How do you do that? You want to follow key reporters on social media, interact when it makes sense, retweet, favorite, like, comment on it. Let it be known that you're following them in a non-stalkerish way, which takes me back to my first point, research, research, research. You definitely want to use email over phone. You want to make it a forwardable email. So don't make them dig for the angle. If you print the email out and it's longer than half a page, shorten it. Making it easy to give reporters what they asked for, which it goes back to my press kit link. And then letting them know you are an expert. There's two ways to approach this. With a current news story, you can reach out as an available expert and source. And every few months, reach out indicating you are an expert in X and available should the need arise. This technique usually works if there's an article you would have been a perfect source for, and you can reference back the article as well as mentioning why you would have been a great source. And then make sure you have website content identifying you as an expert on certain topics that's easily shareable. It doesn't need to be a public link, but being able to share something that has background information that's easy enough to click is a great idea to make sure that you are positioned as an expert in the space. And the final thing here is being accessible. Reporters are working on deadlines, so urgent means urgent. If they reach out to you, it doesn't mean at the end of the day or early next week. This is not where you want to be playing phone tag. And now congratulations, you landed coverage. So what do? So once you get a press hit, you want to read through and make sure there are no typos or misinformation. If there are, you can go back to the reporter if it's a factual piece that's wrong, they would adjust it. But if it's something that you're asking them to fix for content-wise, it's very unlikely they're going to go back and fix that unless there's an actual error. And then you want to share the news. You want to share it on email. You want to share it on social. You want to send a thank you email to the reporter or anyone you worked with to get that done at the publication, letting them know you saw the news, appreciate the coverage. And then you want to, continue to offer to be a source for future articles. So on social, you want to include the link to the coverage. You want to tag the reporter and the publication. And if you have an email list, use it to promote your news. Not an email for every single press hit, but certainly calling out your news in a newsletter or a one-off email. So if you got coverage lots of places, I'd mention it and maybe have it clickable. But I would also just call out what that news was and pick the best coverage and highlight that one, certainly. And then we talked about following reporters, but you want to follow the actual publications as well and share relevant content. So it's not just beating on your chest, me. You're sharing things from your social, from your email that makes sense, that if if reporters start following you as a source, they want to know that you're up to speed on industry content. You want to link back to partners and organizations when it makes sense for reach. And then you can also provide product demos in person, online, YouTube, wherever. And then getting your business involved locally. You live, work, and play in a market, so utilize that. Signing up as a speaker, volunteering your staff, hosting as a location for an event when that's normal again. And they'll typically tag organizations across theirs, and then you can be an expert where you live, work, and play. And if it's a smaller market, you can be a big fish in a little pond. And the key takeaway here is when you land the coverage, you want to interact, say thanks publicly and via email to anyone that helped you get that coverage, i.e. the reporter, share their original post and link tagging the reporter and the publication. And then remembering that quality attention is deserved, not just received. It takes work. And if you do your homework and do it well, you will be rewarded. Take the time to write your message and create your narrative. Without this, you have no story or hook. Build your media list. Without this, you have no outreach. Draft the release and the press kit. Create your pitches, different audiences. We mentioned local, national, and industry. And then determine your timing. The day after a national holiday, no. Pitching a reporter on another continent, you want to consider time zones and pitch during their workday, not yours. And think about your inbox on a Monday and a Friday. So that's where you really want to focus on the middle of the week. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays are more well received. Media outreach is always going to be the most time-consuming piece after research. And then if you get asked for media interviews, you do want to be prepped with a spokesperson, some content that, sound bites that you would want to have. And then don't forget to prepare your team and your systems. So you want to prepare your team in advance for potential influx of traffic. Think about the Shark Tank effect. Ensure your website can accept additional traffic, your customer service, social, fulfillment, IT, and spokesperson teams are all on board and have had calendars cleared, just to make sure that you're all set there and you're not caught with your pants down. And then this is just a recap. Getting your business media attention does take time and effort. The rewards are worth it. And here's a quick recap on what we've talked about today. And then I just wanted to thank you for spending time today. So in addition to retainer and project work, I also offer one-to-one advisory, which works out really well with startup clients. I built this to provide startups a more accessible option for communications and media outreach expertise. And I offer fast-paced sessions to address challenges and uncover new opportunities. And the key takeaway here is an actionable plan. Some might call it a to-do list. But no matter what you call it, you'll be able to hit the ground running with clear direction and basically be able to do it yourself based on our conversation. And I have the link directly on my website. And if it's not right for you, I offer a 15-minute consultation to see if it's right for you. And then I so appreciate you taking the time out of your day to spend time with me. And then I just wanted to also add ways to contact me, and I'm happy to open it up to questions. Thank you. Any questions? Oh, I see questions. Oh, I see. Here they are. Why do I love PR? That's a great question. I just think it's so much fun. I think it's like putting pieces of a puzzle together, and being able to solve a problem for someone else is, it's a fun challenge to me, but also the research piece is really a fun rabbit hole to go down, because there are so many ways to craft a different story. So it's, I liken it to choose your own adventure. All right, let me just catch up on chats. Sneed. I'm sorry, I'm trying to catch up. A great way to reach bloggers versus journalists. Yeah, in research, same thing. I had a client and I was working with influencers, and it was the same way, just going out, seeing, you can use different websites to see where they rank, and basically finding out who are the experts. Typically, if there's a particular industry, I would find those industry publications and see if those bloggers are speaking at those organizations, who's, you know, a who's who in there. But I would definitely use the same tips for sure. My favorite outcomes, ooh, that's a good one. I think that when a client, one of the questions I always ask in my intake forms are, what would make you call me a rock star at the end? And when I can check the box on the publications that they have listed as their like biggest on their wish list is always my favorite. If I'm a solo business owner, sure, I would definitely reach out to, this question is, if we're a solo business owner, can you suggest a routine or something we should be doing regularly to get in sync? So I would definitely be, I particularly like Twitter for this, but following those journalists is key. I would also reach out to organizations in your industry to be able to see what opportunities they have. They may have speaking opportunities. They may be looking for experts, and being in touch with their media relations team would be a great thing. And then just finding those opportunities. If there's, you can go on, HubSpot actually has a great compiled list for this, but being able to go to a Fast Company or a Fortune or a Forbes, and there's ways to be a contributor. And I would look into that and see if that's an opportunity for you. I would also look into smaller publications that might be looking for guest posters, guest bloggers, and I would certainly be looking at different podcasts in your industry as well. Then the next question, what do I think about using paid services? So I mentioned that earlier. The paid services are great for public companies that are really putting out, you know, financial information, investor information, but for a small bootstrapped organization, I would certainly say less is more, and being able to target those reporters, you know, even if you just start at 15 or 20, that's a great way to make contact with those key journalists. And then the paid services can amplify that. I would go back to where I mentioned the embargo. If I did an embargo for 8 a.m. Eastern, I might not load it onto the paid service, so the wire, until maybe later that afternoon. So it still has the same date timestamp, but you've been able to give the journalists that you pitched an opportunity for that news to hit. Those paid services sometimes pull in some weird sites. So just remember that you want to be surrounded by a company that you want to keep and be judged by. And then I see lots of thanks. Any other questions? I'm happy to open it up. Anything else? I can hand it over back to Max, certainly. Thank you again.
Maybe we can still let people to type their questions if they are just finishing. Oh, here we go.
Oh, perfect. Oh, Harrow. Yes. So Harrow is, for anyone that doesn't know, is Help a Reporter Out. And there are a couple of sites like that. And you basically are the recipient of journalist requests in your inbox. Harrow particularly will send out emails 3 times a day, and you can pick the categories you want to get alerts for. And so from there, you would get an opportunity to respond. And the thing with Harrow is if you go on the Cision website, there's some great tips for how to respond to those, but they really just want the soundbite. There's no need to write 2 paragraphs. Think about what you would want in the article, and that's all you really need to put out there. So it would be if whatever they are asking, 1 or 2 sentences with your name and contact information. Thanks for popping that in. And there's a few others. If you Google Help a Reporter Out, you know, competitors. That's a great question. I would not put all my eggs in the Harrow basket. That is a great question. People are getting these emails, PR agencies are getting these emails. If you get a Harrow email at 6 a.m., if you haven't responded to it by 8 a.m., I would skip it. They've already found their person. So even if their deadline is a week away, I would certainly not even bother. So if you skim it and you are getting the email at that time and you can answer, that would be great. Let's see. My personal single biggest success in PR. Oh, is that a single message? I think my personal single biggest success, I don't know if there's just one, but like I mentioned, I think that really being able to, you know, put that puzzle together and think creatively, thinking out of the box. Something that a client once coined me was pleasantly persistent. And I think that you need to be able to be persistent. You obviously don't want to bug journalists over and over and over, but certainly following up, making sure that you are able to find the right people. I certainly wouldn't recommend following up, but if you're persistent about getting the coverage, you'll be able to find new avenues to do that. And Rachel, I see your hand up.
Yeah, hi, it's so good to see you, Lori.
Likewise.
Thank you for this. It was really helpful to just parse out how this world works. I was curious if you had any recommendations. If I'm building a new SaaS company, are there specific outlets? I know you said that depending on what your industry is, you need to be careful with or intentional about who you do follow and reach out to. Are there any news outlets that are good for like a new product launch that you think I should keep an eye out for or start to engage with?
Sure. So if it's something in SaaS, I would certainly, you know, TechCrunch obviously comes to mind, and, you know, Verge, and I can, you know, we can just talk about lists in there, but I would really say top, you know, if that's not the space, like that's the space I play in, so I have the list in my head, but I would definitely look at the competitors to TechCrunch. I would look at reporters that are at TechCrunch. I would then look at where maybe they were. I would look at what they're retweeting. I mean, I really use Twitter for a lot of this, but putting into Google, you know, reporters who cover SaaS, you can definitely find all that. Without giving away too many of my tips, Google and Twitter are your best friends for that, for sure, building the list.
Great, awesome. Thank you.
And there's services as well that you can download lists. You can put target pieces in, but as startups, it's mostly cost prohibitive. So being able to do that. And people are moving companies so quickly in this economic climate, but also just in journalism in general. So really being able to do that research live is great. And a lot of reporters have their email addresses in their Twitter bios. Saw something else pop up. Let's see. We often get asked to do speaking engagements or participate in reports for local or student publications, but don't have time. What do we do? I would make time. I would hire a PR person that maybe could take care of that for you. But I would definitely make time for the ones that could potentially have the biggest return on your investment. And once you have those relationships, you'll keep getting tapped back into that world. And I know Monica, so if you would like to hire me, I'm happy to chat. Let's see, did anything else? Oh, this one came directly to me. If we want to hire you for projects, how do we do that? You can find me on LinkedIn at Lori Cecil Bonani, or on my company page, which is Elsus, ELSSUS. And you can send me a note, which is lori@elsus.com, LORI. And I'd be more than happy to see if it's a potential opportunity to work together. And if not, I'm certainly able to direct you in the right direction if there is an industry that I don't feel like I am an expert in. Like if you have a fashion product or a beauty product, I am not your PR person, but I have contacts that I can do that. But if it's again in tech, healthcare, food and beverage, travel and tourism, education, I am more than happy to chat. Oh, you were so sweet. Thank you. Let's see. Do I know an alternative option where startups can post our news and various? Yes. So there is a company, a reporter, a former marketer and reporter. They launched a couple years ago. It's still in a couple of rounds of beta, but I'm more than happy to make an introduction. The company is called One Pitch. It's for tech. And you basically, it's a mini wire, but a targeted wire. You basically fill out this whole application, you pick the different categories, and then reporters get an email every day with the newest stories, and they can choose. It's almost Harrow backwards. There's no guarantee that anything will get picked up, but it's going to targeted reporters in this space. And they've just recently changed it that you know what reporters it's gone to so that you don't do double pitching. It's onepitch.co, I believe. And if you reach out to me, I'm more than happy to make an introduction to the founder. So Alberto, you had a great idea that's already in progress. Yes, onepitch.co, yep. Yes, I actually had been in touch with him, Lindsay, before Collision, and we met there when things were in person. Do I get them list manually, or are there sites you could download? There are sites, but they are definitely cost prohibitive for a bootstrap startup. Yeah, it's quite expensive to get those lists. Certainly you could share that with across a bunch of companies, but I build my lists manually. I have some access to it, so I can do that occasionally, but I really like building it myself. I think that helps me have greater success. But certainly there's tons of companies like Cision I mentioned earlier. I'm blanking right now on some of them, but you could just put PR lists and that would come out, buying lists. I think that might be everything. I'm just scrolling to see if I missed anything. I'm not so great at catching up, keeping up with chat. All right,